Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I am Linden Griffith with Linden Griffith Coaching. I believe I might be the only person here because I've never done this before, which is cool because that's how things start, right? And I am actually doing Facebook Live. Oh, yay. Hi, Casey and Amy and James. I'm so happy to not be alone anymore. And my Auntie Karen. Yay, coffee and coaching. Coffee is always better with friends, as is coaching. Johnny, oh my goodness, good to see you guys. Cammie and Ben, thank you for coming. Today we are talking about surrender. This is going to be a weekly thing that I do. I set aside a half an hour on Tuesdays. It's coffee and coaching. It's meant to be super casual. This isn't meant to be something that's like intense. Well, whatever. Who knows what's going to show up? But long story short, 30 minutes of casual conversation about coaching and topics that seem to be coming up with my clients through the weeks. So I hope with this series just to inspire some new thinking, maybe give you something that you can actually use throughout your day, maybe throughout your week. Questions are totally welcomed. I'm just happy to be here with you guys. It's my first time, so I'm probably going to screw a lot up, which I'm cool with. I hope you are too. Hi, Jansen. Okay, you guys, so let's get started. I want to talk about surrender. And I'm talking about surrender today because it is coming up with a lot of my clients. And years ago, hi, Chad, I haven't seen you forever. And Lisa, oh my goodness, hello. So I was in a psychology of intimacy class in college. I think it was my junior year. Doesn't matter what it was. But I love the class, and I had no idea why I loved it. It's just one of those things that kind of spoke to me and hit home. And my instructor's name was Kent Hoffman, and I don't really remember much of college, if I'm totally honest with you. I hate to say that and hope my parents don't realize to what extent I wasted that time. But anyways, I remember Kent Hoffman and the psychology of intimacy. And Tori and my roommate, Allison, my freshman year Allison roommate, hello. Anyways, so Kent Hoffman, my instructor of psychology of intimacy, I loved this class. Again, I have no idea why. But we went through the whole semester, and he always talked about surrender. And he handed out these little business cards, just like little tiny 3x5 cards that said surrender on them. And being in college and not really totally being present throughout the process of college, I was like, oh, this something about it hit home. And I held on to it, and I kept it with me. And I thought it was like really profound, and I thought it was kind of cool. I put it in my like little silver 2-door Subaru coupe, you know how it is in college, right? And I put it up in my car to kind of think about and like remember surrender. But I didn't fully understand why or what it meant or really anything else about it. It just seemed to feel right. So I did. And I carried that little card with me for years. And I had it actually until I moved again. I live in Tacoma now. And I finally threw it away not too long ago, which is kind of funny because I actually finally figured out what it means and what the significance of surrendering, can mean, I should say, in our lives. And so, hello, Gwen. I'm so happy to have you guys. Thanks, Kyle, for coming. If you have any questions, please, post them. I'll try to multitask. It's actually pretty challenging to do both at the same time, I'm learning, but that's okay. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so back to surrendering, which is what we're talking about today. I actually finally realized what it meant to surrender. And this is a really big thing for me. I wish I had learned it 8 years ago when I was in college, but, now is the next best thing. So to surrender something, or to surrender means to let go of resistance to what is happening. And a lot of the content that I'm going to talk about today is just something that somebody else who's really super smart said. It's from The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, which is one of my favorite books. And he just talks about being in the moment. And for those of you who just joined us, hello, Debbie. We're talking about The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle and surrendering. So he talks about surrendering in a way that allows you to be totally and fully in the moment. So if you surrender, or if you're in resistance, I should say, that's the opposite of surrendering. If you're in resistance, then you are resisting the present moment. Then you're resisting what's actually happening. For example, I told my social media person, Casey, that I wanted to do Facebook Live. And then I automatically wanted to back out because I got super scared. And so I tried to back out, but she had just, she had just posted that I was going to be doing a Facebook Live. So I felt like I couldn't back out anymore. So that was on just Friday night. So I kind of resisted for 3 days this idea of doing Facebook Live because I got intimidated and scared. And I could have been afraid of doing this for 3 days and not wanted to, and ruminated on it and freaked myself out. And what am I going to talk about? And that feeling, right? The feeling in your body when you feel like you're locked into something and you don't want to do it. And so I had to identify that feeling and just be aware of that resistance within myself and then decide to let it go. And letting go really can be a decision. It can happen quickly and it can happen once, and then you learn how to do it, and then you can just let go of anything that comes your way. I have some people that are able to do that within like one coaching call, and it's incredible to me. I admire those people. I am not one of those people. I like to resist. I like to make things complex, and I like to hold on. And so if I can share anything with you guys that would allow you to not have that resistance in your life, either today or tomorrow in an instant or a moment, who knows, if you're listening to this, there's probably a reason. And at some point you might think, that thing about surrendering, maybe what would happen if I surrendered to this moment right now? And what happens when you surrender, when you give in and when you let go and when you trust, you're able to be fully present. Now you can be fully present in the moment. And when you're fully present, there is no problem and there is no fear and there's nothing that is actually wrong. And so you can start to actually be in that moment. And space clears up in your mind. It's incredible what this will do for you, because if you're fully present and you're not in resistance to what is happening, you can actually start to become in your body calm, which I just did, by the way. I was like freaked out all the way until this moment. You can actually become calm, and you can actually become generative, and you can use that energy that was busy resisting what is to create something else. So you can actually create connection. You can actually create creativity. You can actually build something. You can actually, extend love to others, or, even like connect with somebody you've never met before. So there's all sorts of things that can happen when you surrender to what's happening in the moment and you give in to what is, and then you just let it be. Now you can show up who you are, who you're meant to be, and more of who you desire and wish to truly be, rather than fear, because that's what resistance is. Resistance is fear to what's happening. And there's no point in resisting anything, because we're living life. Like you and we're here right now, whether you're paying attention or not. Like I'm here right now. Facebook says you're here right now, so it must be true, right? So if you're here right now and you're resisting the moment, like, why am I here right now? Then you may or may not glean some of this information. If you allow yourself to be fully present in the moment, you might gain something from this information. You might pick up this book. You have to just continue the practice second by second. And my cousin's wife, Gwen, gets this. She created a mantra in order to get over the anxiety of surrendering. Still a work in progress. Yes, thank you so much, Gwen. The interesting thing about this kind of stuff, we call it a work in progress, right? But that term gets used so lightly, because what life is a work in progress. And so many of my clients are like, when will I finally be there? When does it click? And then you just go about living your life, from a place of love and joy and happiness, ever after, right? That's the way it is in all the movies and the media and everything else. And the truth is that it doesn't typically work that way. It is a practice, and it is something that you do every moment of every day. I'm a recent stepmom of a 6-year-old boy. So I've never been around kids before in my whole life. And literally never really been around kids before my whole life. And so having a stepson in the house, a 6-year-old no less, who is high energy, super theatrical, very loud, and an only child. So we are oftentimes his primary source of entertainment, which I kind of feel bad for him for. But the whole point of all this is that, like, I was resisting this little 6-year-old for a really long time. And I hate to say that because I feel kind of like a jerk. But I didn't know how to do it. I was scared. And so I didn't want to embrace what was, which was a 6-year-old screaming and running through the house and, riling up the dogs and spilling things. And the 6-year-olds can't even like carry in a pile of plates from the kitchen table. Like, I didn't know that. And so, they're more work, they're more attention, they're more everything. And when I first started spending time with Nolan, it was really challenging to me because I was resisting him, because I didn't want this new upset in my life. And I called it an upset. Like, that's full transparency. This is sort of scary what you're going to say when you're live. But I was scared because here was this thing, this little guy that was totally interrupting my life from my viewpoint. My ego was like, this is a massive interruption. I like peace and quiet. Like, this is the opposite of that. And so what I did naturally, because I was fearful, is I resisted it. I didn't want it. I didn't want to admit that it was a part of my life. And, I pushed away at it, and I kind of let my husband handle it, and I would take a back seat, and I would let other people do it. And I would kind of shut down and close off. And I realized that I married this man, and that this 6-year-old wasn't going to go anywhere. And he wasn't going to be 18 for another 12 years. So I had to hurry up and figure out something within myself to be able to allow space for this new part of my life that wasn't going to go anywhere. I could have resisted it. I could have. And I think that a lot of people might still resist, stepchildren or interruptions in their life. That new coworker that you can't stand, or a boss that you can't stand, right? They're not going to change. And unless you change or go somewhere, it's going to be a problem. So this is where surrendering really comes into play. Because if you surrender, and by the way, this comes about in every part of life. It can be another person, another place, another thing, an environment. It can be eating habits or drinking habits. Or I'm not saying like you just totally give in to, I was an alcoholic for a long time. And I drank and drank and drank and drank and drank. And I didn't know how to stop drinking. And I didn't throw up, and I would black out. And this went on for a really long time in my life. And I resisted stopping. Hi, Ruth. Great to see you. I resisted stopping because it was a way of life that I knew and was familiar and comfortable. And God forbid if I stopped, I'd have to be sober in this world. And that was really, really scary for me. So I resisted that for a really long time. And I continued to drink, and I continued to live this lifestyle that wasn't serving me. So all this to add in to say that you can surrender to every different aspects of life. People, places, things, environments, habits. And what you'll find is when you surrender, even feelings, depression, anxiety, when you just surrender and you give in. And a lot of times when you surrender, it can have a different vibe or different feeling. Sometimes I surrender and it's kind of like, fuck it, like I can't do it anymore. It's sort of like indifferent, and I can't do it. So, F it, I surrender, right? And other times it might be like, please God, let me surrender. Like, I can't do this. Like, I need to hand it over. And you could take that in a religious sense. If you're religious, you can take it in just a casual sense, if that doesn't feel right to you. But just like, giving up, this is where giving up and surrendering, giving up is actually a really good thing. Because when you give up attachment too. And if you don't have attachment to anything, then you can't be at the effect of it. And these are all things that are taught by, philosophers and theologians and in different religions and spirituality. And they're all things that have been around for a really long time. So the idea to surrender, the idea to give up, the idea to let go, the idea of non-attachment, right? These are all themes in great literature, in great spirituality, in great thinking. So none of this is mine, so to say, right? It's just repackaging something that somebody else has said. Not even packaging it, but I just want to spread the word because it's helped me so much. So let's get back to surrendering with my 6-year-old, because it's happening and it's incredible and I love it. And I'm so freaking grateful that I started to give in, because I wasn't going to win that. And staying closed off from my stepson would be the most painful thing in the world, right? Because here's this little being who's teaching me how to show up in life totally free, totally in love, totally unhindered. He's not thinking, he's not filtering, he's not doing anything to save me, which is incredible. And the way that, I think really is the best way to serve others in life is to just show up fully yourself. And when we totally show up as ourselves, it can be threatening to others because we're not used to that. So I had up this wall. I had up this sense of threat against my 6-year-old, which is loony. But that's the truth. And so I decided to surrender. And so in surrendering, I had to make a conscious choice. First of all, I had to be, hello, Thomas. So glad you could join us. Oh, yay. Hi, Anu. So I had to make a conscious choice because that's where any of this starts, right? You have to be conscious of what's happening to be able to change it or to do something different. And so that's the first step of anything ever, is to become conscious. And what I mean by becoming conscious is just simply becoming aware. And so you become aware of a feeling. You become aware of a pattern of thinking. You become aware of the way that you feel in your body. And this information will allow you to notice what it is that you're thinking inside. And so that's where we start, is by noticing, how do I feel? If you're feeling feelings of negativity, of anxiety, of upset, of anything that doesn't feel good, you can be sure that you've got thinking in your mind that isn't serving you. Thinking in your mind that is of upset, or that would cause anxiety, or that would actually make you feel feelings of negativity. So one of the best ways to become aware or conscious of what's going on in your head is to start with the body, because typically we're really aware of how we feel. I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling stressed out, right? And so you notice these things and you say, oh, I notice that I'm feeling this way. Must mean that I have something going on in my head. So if you can shine a light on what's going on in your head, then you can actually begin to decide whether or not you want that there. And I don't know many people who actually choose lives of worry and anxiety and upset and depression. That's why a lot of people reach out to me, because they're experiencing things like this and they don't want to feel that way anymore. So how do you let go of these ideas? Because somebody doesn't come up to you and hand you a bag of upset. Somebody doesn't come up to you and hand you a bag of anxiety. Somebody doesn't say, hey, you know what? I'm really tired of being stressed out. I don't want it anymore. And then here, this is yours, right? So you don't, these things, I got distracted because Paul and Sarah and Carolyn are here. Hello. Sorry, guys. So we become aware because these things are not, they're a choice whether we know it or not. So we recognize that through our feeling the way that we feel, that we are walking around with these thoughts in our head that cause these feelings of upset. Once we're aware of this, then we can consciously decide to replace that thought with something else. Letting go, like my cousin Gwen posted, she created a mantra around letting go. And I know Gwen is crazy creative. So if you're creative, this can be something that will serve you massively. In fact, in writing my book, whenever I try to think about what I want to write, or if I think that I have writer's block or anything like that, if I have resistance, I can't move forward what I can't think about. And I'm sure if any of you have ever tried to create something, you can relate to that notion. But when you let go and you just decide to create some space and clear in your mind, and that can be through the repetition of a mantra, and it can be through meditation and creating space, and it can just be a conscious choice. It can be, what am I holding on to and what do I want to let go? It can be a question that allows you to set yourself up for letting go. What can I let go of in this moment? So then you start to actually direct your thinking in a way that is supportive of creating what it is that you want for yourself in your day. So for me, I noticed that whenever, the little pitter patter of feet, and a lot of women get really excited about that, and it's so sweet. It's like little feet, it's little kids, that would freak me out. I would go into fight or flight mode. And I started to notice that within my body, because it meant that there was going to be loud noise, there's going to be a lot of energy, there's going to have to be my attention, and I was tired or fatigued and so I started to notice this tension that would come into my body whenever the little guy would come around, the little guy being my stepson Nolan, who I love and adore, but I'm human just like anybody else. And, you know, being a stepmom, if you've been one, you know, it's not like the easiest task in the world. So all that to say, I started to notice my body. I would start to actually become anxious, and I would start to notice things contracting and getting tighter. And now when you resist something, so I like to work out a lot too, when you resist something, you actually have to push, right? You have to push weight away from you. It's the same exact thing. When you contract and you are tight, you're doing the same thing. You're pushing, right? So now you're becoming smaller energy. And so if you think about that, if you think about that contraction of energy and you think about becoming this like ball of anxiety or resistance, same thing, how open are you? If Nolan comes in and says, hey, mom, he calls me mom, poor kid, I'm trying. But if he comes in and says, hey, mom, I want a snack, and I'm feeling like this and like freaked out and scared, like what's my response going to be? It's like, go get it yourself. And then what happens? Well, he's going to spill the milk or hang on the doors of the refrigerator or knock something over. And that's not his fault because I'm too busy being contracted and self-centered. So what I started to notice was this tension, right? And you can feel it in your body. When you start to notice that, then you can make a choice. So instead of being resistant to what's happening, I have to change my mindset to how can I be more open? How can I be more loving? How can I show connection and love in this moment instead of resistance and fear? So I take the time, which is a fraction of a second if you practice, and notice my body, notice what's going on, and then I can choose to be something different. I can choose to show up. How do I want to be with my kid in this moment? How do I want to show up for him, for myself, and what do I want to create in this day? If I show up in resistance for this day, typically in the beginning of your day, and you guys may notice this, if you wake up like closed and contracted, your whole day sort of unfolds in that way. You know, it's a lot of negativity, it's a lot of closed contraction, energetic vibrations throughout the rest of your day. And so if you wake up and you're open and you set an intention to stay open early on in your day, then you can actually respond differently, which is very different than reacting. So when you react to something, that's a fear-based response. That's a fear-based reflex. That's a reaction. It's knee-jerk. You're not conscious when you're doing it. And when you consciously surrender and you make a choice, that's a choice to respond. How do I want to be in this moment? We get to start to be intentional, and it starts to transform relationships. It starts to transform our lives at work. It starts to transform our life with our partners and our children, even the interactions with baristas and people who you're checking out with at the store. All of a sudden, you have the choice to show up as somebody who you really are, rather than the stressed out, overwhelmed, depressed, anxious person that you have the patterns of being. And that's freedom. That's true freedom. People come to me all the time with the desire to have a new position at work, to switch careers, to get in or out of a relationship, to change something about their lives. And it's kind of funny because we always work on their inner environment, their inner like thought dialogue, their inner processing, because that's what ultimately creates your reality. That's what ultimately transforms the high maintenance, loud, obnoxious 6-year-old stepson into a beautiful being of love and joy who I get to take care of and serve and reap the benefits of, you know, of loving him. It feels so good to love somebody so innocent and so pure, and that gets reflected back. I mean, he is abundant with that, but when I'm closed off, when I am in reactionary, like uptight fear mode, like there's none of that. There's no love there. But when I open myself and I choose to serve, when I open myself and decide that I'm going to respond and be open today, then I create a totally different reality for myself. And nothing has changed. Nolan doesn't like all of a sudden get quiet and, you know, decide he's totally into reading his book all day long, which sometimes he does, which is great. But nothing's changed except for me. And that's the beauty of this work, is that You don't actually have to change or manipulate anything in your external environment. You can have the same boss, you can have the same job, and you can have the same partner or whatever, same situation, and you can dramatically change what is. You can dramatically change that by shifting your inner environment through surrendering, because it's happening anyways. And that doesn't mean that you have to stay stuck. But when you're in resistance to something, when you're resisting what is, it will keep you stuck. So often people want to make moves, they want to make changes, and they don't see a way out. And the reason is because they're still resisting. And that resistant energy, remember, is small. And it's looking down. And think about like if you're in immense amounts of psychological pain, you're in fetal position. I know this because I know this position. And so you get smaller and you contract and contract until you get as small as you possibly can. And your head is down and your eyes are down. And that's what a depressed, upset person, anxious person, stressed out person, overwhelmed person looks like. So if you start to notice, again, signals from your body, you can choose to open up. You can choose to change your physique. You can choose to look up at the horizon. Small, fun little trick that I know some of you out there know about, but it's one of my favorites. You just look up a little bit and immediately you start to feel better. Immediately you can be more resourceful. By the way, this works in working out too. If you use your eyes, it's amazing. If you're doing a back squat and you look up on the extension, you can actually become stronger. So your eyes are actually, or our body is so biologically and physiologically part of our thinking, and so often we think it's very separate, mind versus body. But we're so integrated that you can actually shift and use your body to shift your mind, and vice versa. And so you can play with this, and there's a lot of information out there, and I know I'm just giving snippets. But notice, start to keep track of yourself and your own behaviors and your own patterns, and what do you look like when you are these feelings of negativity, and what do you look like when you are these feelings of freedom? If you see a kid who's like ultimate freedom, they're like wild and crazy and they're using everything, right? Voice, body, like it's big, massive joy and movement. And when they're bummed or they're sad, everything shrinks, right? And so we can see this really clearly on children because it's totally unfiltered and it's totally pure emotion. It's raw. And so all this to get back to the point of surrendering. And I know we only have 3 minutes. If anybody has any questions, throw them out now. But the first step in surrendering, guys, right? Number one, we have to become consciously aware of resistance. We know what resistance is by the feeling. Use your body. Notice how you feel. Feel the resistance. Feel the contraction. Notice when you react. Reaction, comes quickly and it's knee-jerk, and typically it's fear-based, which ends up being really negative. If you're those things, you know that you are in resistance to what is. So the invitation is to surrender. So how do you surrender? Number one, right, what we're talking about, become aware. Number two, make a conscious choice. Do I want this? No, so we have to let go. That's the choice. And you may hear that my stepson just showed up. And so we decide that we want to be doing something else. I could be resistant right now and I could feel that energy coming and freak out. He's going to mess this up. Or I can be open and invite it and say, oh, well, what if Nolan shows up? How fun would that be? You guys would get to meet Nolan, right? And so the same thing, like your boss that walks in the door, maybe you see him through the eyes of innocence. Maybe you see him through the eyes of acceptance and love next time they walk through the door. Or maybe that person who really continually bugs you or is obnoxious or annoying, maybe you make the conscious effort just to see them for who they are, which is an innocent, unconscious being, probably unconscious, who doesn't know that the way that they are bothers you, right? And now all of a sudden we are not contracting and reacting, and we can actually open up and respond. That person who bugs you, really what they need is an openness and love. That person who, is obnoxious is there and being that way because they probably feel threatened or unsure about themselves or insignificant or who knows what, right? But always being open and always choosing to respond will always get you a better result. So continually surrender, continually let go, continue to make that conscious choice. Ask yourself the question, how can I let go? What can I let go of in this moment right now? What am I resisting in this moment, and what do I choose instead? As you continue this practice, you'll start to know that it becomes more automatic. And just as my cousin Gwen noted, it's a progress, or excuse me, it's a work in progress. And that's life, because you're never going to get there and be like, oh, I made it, and it all smooth sailing from here. And I wish I could tell you otherwise, but from my experience coaching and living life for a couple of decades, 3 decades, whatever, it continues to go on. And you know what? We can welcome those as opportunities to become better at letting go. No matter what shows up, you have to let go and let go and let go. So I know that it's 9 o'clock. That's our half an hour of conversation on the topic of surrendering. It was a little disjointed this morning. I hope that you guys gained something out of it. If you're willing and are still watching, I would love if you would post what you got out of it or any questions that you might have. I'll stick around for a few minutes. Those of you that have to go, that's the content for today. So please, of course, be on your way. And I hope that this serves you in some way today. Maybe share it with somebody else just by being open. Thank you, guys. And if there's any questions or comments, that would be awesome. I know some of you are still out there. If you want to go into this and learn more, like I mentioned earlier, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle is where a lot of this content comes from. And he just talks about becoming present in the moment and talks about the power of being able to be present in that moment of right now. So I'll let you guys get on with your day. Feel free to message me if you want any follow-up or have any questions. And a lot of love to all of you, and I hope to see some of you again next week. Bye.